All right, so today I'm going to talk about this new testing framework called Snapshot Testing. So first, a raise of hands, who has worked with any kind of snapshot testing framework before? Oh, quite many. That's fun. If you keep raising your hands. So now keep raising your hands if you've used this thing. Oh, a few people, but okay. So some people lowered their hands, which is good. That means that probably you've tried out FB Snapshot test case before, or after Uber took it over and made the iOS Snapshot test case, and you want to learn more about this new hot thing, which is great because I love it. So the new Snapshot testing framework is created by the guys behind Point Free, which is like this Swift video series, kind of like what Chris Sidoff and the Objective-C.io guys did with their video series. And it's all done in Swift as compared to the old FB Snapshot test case library, which was done in Objective-C. So, okay, snapshot testing, the basics. So snapshot tests, they run as unit tests. You don't have to run them as UI tests, which is great because unit tests are much easier to run and they go much faster, right? And you are in much more control over the code. So it works like this. First run, it captures a snapshot. A snapshot can be anything, and I'm gonna get to that in just a second. But it then saves that snapshot. You commit those snapshots of your test to your repository together with your code. Those become your fixtures for the tests. And on later runs, it just captures a new snapshot and compares that to the old one that you have saved. So it's a really easy concept, right? So what can you snapshot? Well, the most obvious thing is views and view controllers, right? So this is the syntax. You just import snapshot testing, and then you can, in your unit tests, do assert snapshot matching, a reference to a view or a view controller. And then what's interesting is that for each thing that you can snapshot, you can use different what's called snapshot strategies. So for instance, for a view controller, you can take a snapshot of an image. So it's going to render it in a UI kit and take an image of that. Or you can also snapshot the recursive description of the view controller. So that way, you're going to get back the view hierarchy and all the properties on different views. So I'm going to show all of this in a demo later. One thing to note here is that you can simulate specific devices with this snapshotting for view controllers, but it can be really tricky. There are caveats to it. So if you currently, there's one limitation where basically all your machines that run these snapshot tests have to be set up to use the same kind of simulator, because else, if they have like different scaling, if you have an iPhone X and an iPhone 5, and you have like one 2x device and a 3x device, the screenshots are gonna come out different. So even though you can like technically simulate this using, so what's done under hood is that it used trait collections and it just use different frames for different devices you want to simulate. It doesn't really work that well in practice currently. Another thing you can do is also to use a parameter for lowering the precision. So imagine that you have a case where you don't always get pixel perfect results back, but it's maybe 95% perfect and just fluctuates those last pixels over time. What you can do then is just attach another parameter to these functions. Okay, so more things you can snapshot. You can actually snapshot anything. You can snapshot encodables and take snapshots of them as JSON or asplists. Super simple, right? You just take any objects, implement the encodable protocol. But it doesn't end there. You can actually dump whatever memory. So you can take a struct and you can assert a snapshot with the dump strategy. And what's going to do is it's going to use the Swift reflection API to get all the properties out and print out all the values, and you're going to see them in a text file later. Okay, so I'm going to show you all of this in a demo. So and also, first of all, huge thanks to first Patrick, who's providing the laptop for me since my laptop is running the streaming, and Frederick and Robin in the back, who kind of panically set up a workaround for me in a pod file, which just blew everything up. So I'm going to switch to mirroring so you can see what's going on. So basically, if you would at any point have any troubles setting this up on your computer using CocoaPods, this is a great workaround for a problem that might show up. Okay, so we're not gonna talk about that that much more. Okay, so I have a really simple demo set up here. I'm gonna run the app, and you're gonna see it's not even an app, right? It's the simplest thing you've ever seen. It's just a view controller. Hello, snapshot testing. It has some kind of view which says boo for some reason. Okay, so let's see how we can snapshot test this. So here we have our unit tests. Let's first start out to look at the view controller. So what I'm doing is just importing the snapshot testing framework. We can ignore this for later. And then with my view controller, it sits in a storyboard. So let's look at that storyboard. So it's really simple, right? It has this view controller, it has a custom view. It's actually IB designable, but it seems like it's taking a while for that to render. So the only thing you do here is get an instance of the view controller, and then you can just start asserting the snapshot. So now let me see here. I run this test and let's see what happens. Okay, so since this is the first time I ran these tests, it says failed, no reference was found on disk, and then it says automatically record a snapshot. And you can see down here in the console where it saved the snapshot. And it actually saves it in the same folder as your test in a subfolder called snapshots. So let's look at that. So here we have the project, and inside the test folder there's a snapshots folder. I don't know if you can see, but in there's a folder called Snapshot Test Demo Tests, which is the name of this test class. So we got the rendered image here. Perfect, right? And since we also did this recursive description snapshot, we get that as well, and you cannot see that very well. Let me see if I can actually turn on the accessibility zoom things. I'm not using my own laptop, so okay, great. So as you can see, it's printed out the view hierarchy. You see the frame of this view controller's view. You see what subviews it has. It has this custom rounded view, which in turn contains a label. It has another label. So this is another way of doing the snapshot. So you can use both strategies or the one or other, depending on what you prefer. So if I run this test again, now that we have these recorded snapshots in place, then it should go green. Perfect, right? And if we change something, come on, interface builder. So we can just change text here. in the label to just say hello. Run the test again. And it would fail, right? Expected snapshot to match the reference. It didn't. And what's interesting is that you can have a look here in Xcode in this furthermost right tab. You can look at the test, and inside it actually gives you the diff. So I can now look at the reference, I can look at the failure, and I can look at the difference. So here I see where things went wrong. This is pretty nice, right? And of course, if you're doing this on your CI, then you can start automating stuff, so maybe even post. We never went that far with the demo I was involved in at Doer, but you could, in theory, take these diffs and maybe post them as a comment in your GitHub pull request whenever there's a failure. Okay, so let's ignore this for later. Now, next thing you can test is a view, right? So we have this this custom view. It's called rounded view. You saw it earlier in the simulator. It's basically just a view with rounded corners with a text label inside. You can see the code for it here. It has a backing layer which just sets the corner radius every time you change the bounds. And you can set a text. And let's ignore the style for now. So it has a style with some background colors, but basically this is just any other custom view which is IB designable. It doesn't have to be IB designable, but it works with that as well. So we can run a snapshot test here too. One thing to note here, so first of all, we create the view, we set the properties, and we assert the snapshot. Just as last time, first time it runs, it creates the first initial snapshot for us. We got it right here. And subsequent times, it's going to go green. One thing to note is that you need to set the frame of the view in some kind of way, because if you try to render this with a 0 frame, it's not going to work. And if you're using auto layout, the best way of doing this is to just set the frame with the size of what auto layout thinks is the proper size for this view, how it would lay it out if you would actually add it as a subview to the view hierarchy. So you can use that with this really quick extension, just setting the frame to system layout size fitting, and you can either use expanded size or compressed size here. Doesn't have any big difference. Okay, so cool. We can test view controllers and we can test views. Nothing really spectacular yet. Now, let's say that you would like to test all these different styles. So we have an enum here. So this view can be normal or warning or error in its style. So one fun little hack that I discovered, which really improved my working flow with snapshot testing, was that you can actually iterate and do this in a loop. So here we have a test. Just as before, it sets up this view, it says the text, it says its sizes. But then, since I made this style property case iterable, that means that it's going to get this all cases property, which consists of the normal, warning, and error. What I can do is create a for loop. I go through all the styles, and in the loop, I set the style on the view, take a snapshot, then next turn in the loop, set the new style, take a snapshot, and this becomes really interesting. So we're going to run that and see what happens. Just as before, it's going to say it's created references. So now, let's look at what actually happened. So we got this test function called test rounded view styles. And what snapshot testing did was to create 3 screenshots. So let's, So we have test rounded view styles 1, dot 1, dot 2, dot 3. And now, suddenly, we have snapshots for all our different styles. And now you can only imagine and extrapolate how powerful this can be when you're building new custom views, because it makes it really, really simple to iterate through and test all your cases. And especially if you're doing any kind of refactoring, you can iterate through all the different cases. You do the refactoring, and if you screw anything up on one specific case, it's going to tell you exactly what case screwed up, and you're going to see how. So this really enables you to get a kind of a TDD style of programming for views, which really was mind-blowing for me. And it works really well when you're creating new views as well. You can set all these snapshots up, and I usually have the workflow where I have the code and I have a window with the snapshots here, and I do some changes to the code, run the unit test, look at the snapshots, and look at them and see, is this what I want the view to look like? If yes, okay, keep going on adding the next thing. Otherwise, I just delete them, do some more tweaks, run again, and see what the snapshots do this time. I think it enables a really powerful workflow. Okay, so the last thing you can do, which I want to show, is how you can use this to test other things than views. So in this case, this might be a contrived example, but I have this user model. It has a username, which is a string, and an email address as a string. So this could be whatever properties, right? And this user model also implements the codable protocol. So what I can do then, by making it encodable, I can take a snapshot as JSON. And actually, without encodable, so let's try that out first, I can just dump it. So what it's going to do, it's going to use the Swift Mirror API to look through all the different variables in the struct. And it's going to show us to us. Yeah, here we go. So this is what it output. And this is with 0 code, right? I just said, take a snapshot of this whatever thing. You have no idea how it looks like. Just dump the memory. And immediately you can see how it's really surprising how readable it still gets, right? And if you just make this encodable, then you can start taking snapshots as JSONs orplists or whatever you like. So this enables you to, instead of, so maybe you're testing things today where, okay, let's see, yeah, so this is the JSON, super simple. So maybe today you're testing some things with unit tests where you have JSON output, and you have to include that JSON output to your test bundle, and you have your fixtures.json files somewhere that you test against, and you have to update them manually whenever something changes. Maybe you have like some API service, you want to change that, and you want to assert that it outputs what you expect, right? By using snapshot testing, you don't have to do these fixtures beforehand. You can just take a snapshot, look at the snapshot, and check, was this what I expected? Is this how it's supposed to be? Okay, great. then leave it be. Otherwise, you just delete it, make changes to your code, look at the snapshot again. Really powerful. Okay. So, some learnings from this. It's really, really, really simple to get started with. Like literally, I think if you haven't tried it yet, just do it when you have a spare half an hour. You don't need more time than that. You're going to see immediate benefits. It's really extensible. So these different snapshot strategies, there's a blog post out on point 3 where they make an extension for attributed strings. So basically they create a new snapshot strategy where you can type assert matching this attributed string as image. And then they've implemented the image strategy for the attributed string by just rendering it in a label. So you can do lots of powerful stuff with this. And as mentioned, it enables TDD for views, which is, for me, mind-blowing. Enables the needs for fixtures. Yeah, I mentioned this before. You need to use the same simulator when generating the images as you're going to run on your CI. So make sure to either look up what simulator your CI is using or have that in a config. Just make sure it happens, because otherwise you're going to scratch your head and wonder, why is this not matching? And possibly, if you're doing this on a large project, which you already have, you might get some initial false positives from various things, depending on your CI pipeline. But it shouldn't be too tricky. Okay, so the verdict, I think this is absolutely incredible, and I really think all you should try it out. And yeah, that's kind of it for me. Thanks.